And we are recording Michigan Derby Podcast, episode number 4, sponsored by Blade Steel Supply. I say it once during the episode. Special guest tonight is a young, upcoming driver, pretty tough kid, Logan Sorensen. How you doing tonight?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. Um, uh, the way I want to start out this podcast is your dad is Todd Sorensen.
Yep.
Um, So you came up with your dad being pretty involved in Derby. What was that like?
It was pretty crazy, to be honest. I mean, growing up, just watching him and his buddies. Back in the day, you could drive down any old back road and find a car, pick it up for $50, and they drive it home. And just growing up in the back seat, being like, "Hey, Dad, you see that one back behind that house? Let's go look at it." And it just progressed over the years. And
At what? Okay.
yeah, I just never think that it'd be to where it's at today.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're kind of growing up. You're still the youngster. What age are you right now?
24, just turned 24.
24. Okay. But you're already running big shows.
Yeah.
So if we could go back to what age did you start running?
Oh, I ran a small car when I was probably 17. It was like August, end of the year show at Winston Speedway. The Speedway put it on themselves. But yeah, I was 16 or 17 because we had training camp football the next day, and I went and ran a derby, and my coach heard about it, and he asked me what I was doing. He was like, we got training camp coming up. Why are you out here derbying? And I was like, well, it's been my whole life. I've always wanted to do it. I got the chance, so I did it.
So you always aspired to be a derby driver, even from being really young in life, age I don't know 6, 7,
Yeah.
8.
Yeah, I mean, when I was probably about 4 years old, I was watching my dad at the Hart Oceana County Fair, and I fell off the bleachers, and it was split my head open. But even then, it was because I was so trying to get all up in the action, see what's going on. It's just one of those things that I've always wanted to do. Something I was always super interested in from being a little kid, watching my old man.
Gotcha. Now, your dad now is known for being he owns TNT Motorsports, and he puts on roughly how many shows a year?
Oh, I'd probably say between 35 and 40 shows a year.
Okay. Now, I knew your dad as a driver personally, and
Yeah.
honestly, top tier driver. He was the pinnacle of track position.
Yeah.
Has he? Have you guys ever discussed any driving strategy?
Yeah, he likes to tell me how I should have drove and what I should have done. But that's because for a long time, he got out of it for last time he had probably ran up until this year was probably 2012 was the last time he ran, 2011-ish, somewhere in that time frame.
Yes.
So when I actually started derbying, he was surprised. I was a kid and growing up, and he's like, well, I got this car. And I was like, yeah, let's run it. And he's like, oh, you actually want to? And I was like, yeah. So spent the next 2 nights stripping out a car, wiring it together, and from there he was like, oh, well, I ended up taking second in the first show or whatever, and granted it's just a front-wheel drive car, and he was like, well, you could do this, you could do that, and I was like, yeah, just see how it goes. And as time went, ran a couple of his shows and won a few small cars, but then I wanted to venture out because, the west side of Michigan, you get 1 or 2 promoters that put on a show over here, but mainly it's my dad putting on all the shows over here, so
Right.
I couldn't really stay just running for him, even if I'm a 17, 18-year-old kid.
You didn't want to run into a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
Right.
So I started going out, and the first show that we traveled to was Turkey Derby, and it was just one of those things. It was like, oh, I got a Crown Vic, and I can go find a Chevy motor on Facebook Marketplace, and let's just go see what we do. And it was probably 2016, 2017, and me and my buddy Cameron, we decided we were going to go down there and run. And we showed up, and some bone stock. I had a bone stock Vic with a Chevy motor dropped in it, factory 8.8. You know, weld the drive shaft together, tail shaft, mounted shifter, factory steering, just with a 4-point cage in it. And I think I still even had points in the motor.
Like a points
we showed
distributor?
up and we looked around and we were like, oh, I guess this isn't like a derby where you just kind of run a stock car. And I ended up getting 4th down there at Turkey Derby, my first time going down there.
Was that in the old style limited weld class?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And I got shoved in the corner, and it was just one of those things. I was like, man, I could have done better, you know. I tires, rear end, gears, you know. Just start thinking about all the different things that you could have had
And
to get yourself out of that situation.
Yep, and you start to evolve.
From there, it just went on, and we started deciding to go down to South Bend because growing up, I mean, you would see my dad, Ted Cooper, all go down and they battle it out with Mike Nugent and all the other Nugents down there. So that was the pinnacle of what you thought about if you grew up on this side of the state, you know, a Michigan-Indiana rivalry. So then we pushed to want to go there, and we went down there and ran, ended up taking 2nd or 3rd down there. After the first time, we got just obliterated down there, shoved in the corner and just beat on. And just one of those things, you always want to get better. Whether you're got the funds to do it or not, you're always trying to figure something out.
Right.
And it just kept progressing, and now we're to a point where we got cradles on motors and everything else, which obviously everybody does. But from where I started 4 years ago doing it to where I'm at now, I would have never guessed that I would have the stuff that I have now and be running the equipment I have and running against the caliber of drivers like Don Santel, Trevor Jones, Trevor Pedke, you know, all those guys, whether you get your butt kicked by them or not, they're all top-tier drivers, and it makes you better to go run against them all the time. And I just would have never imagined it'd be to that point at 4 years into running a big car and stuff.
So okay, you've been running for 4 years, not very long.
I've been running big cars for about 4 years, yeah. I mean, like I said, I ran the front-wheel drive cars stuff through high school and beginning of college. And
okay, so let's backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
You know, you started out in a front-wheel drive car, which,
Yep.
you know, you're going to hear probably more stories that start out like that with the newer drivers. I don't think I'm going to have a lot of guys tell me that they bought their first Derby motor off Marketplace. But anyways, so you're deciding to run shows. You went and picked up a front-wheel drive car, and you guys got it together, and you're pulling out on the track your first Derby. Did you? What Derby was this?
It was at Winston Motor Speedway.
Yep.
Probably 2013, and they had their circle track dirt cars racing, and it was just the end of the night thing. It was the track themselves was putting it on. It wasn't a promoter coming in or anything, and they were having a show, and my dad was just like, "You want to run? Let's go."
Right. So you're pulling out on the track your first Derby. What's going through your mind?
You know, nerves. Sitting there, it was a early 90s, the box Luminas. Thing was rotted just to pieces. And sitting there thinking, what do I even hit with this? Like, I've always heard stories of my dad, you know, talking about hitting square back in the day with the flat bumpers, make sure you're not jacking one frame rail. But I'm sitting there in a front-wheel drive car, and my dad's like, just keep your head and drive how you want to drive. Just don't get too excited and put yourself in a situation you don't want to be in. And so it was just like, okay, well, I don't even know what to do.
Right, yeah, I mean, that being your first Derby.
How to drive a front-wheel drive car.
Right.
It's just...
You don't
see
know...
what you can do.
Right, you don't know what that means necessarily, so you're just out there kind of feeling it out.
Yeah.
Right. So how did you fare out at your first Derby?
I think I came down to third place. A guy named... I can't remember who won. A guy named Jeff Eakin was there. He used to help my dad out a lot with cars and everything. And
oh yeah.
He was kind of the one that told my dad about the show, and then he wanted my dad to run, I think. And then my dad was like, "Oh no, my kids want to run. Like, that's what I'm gonna have them do. I'm gonna have them run front wheel drive cars." So
sure. So How many front wheel drive cars did you wind up running before you got into a big car?
Oh, so that would have been probably about 4 years.
Yeah, I mean,
3 or 4 years of little cars, and then decided to get into big cars.
how many shows a year did you run at the time?
Oh, the second year I actually, like the second full summer, I think I ran 14 shows.
Holy.
Yeah.
But you can do that
Minivans,
you can do that with
Impalas, like
right.
whatever
Well,
little cars there were.
yeah, but you can do that with a front wheel drive car, like
Yeah.
a gut and go build. You can run
Mm-hmm.
15 shows a year, and it's really not that all that taxing because it's a couple of day build.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just ripping the back seats out and the door panels and pulling the carpet out of the trunk and taking the trim off the outside. I was leaving the carpet in the front seat at the time because I didn't want to pull the seats out to cut it out, So
Right. So
it was a couple hours and you could go run,
right.
wire the door shut. And at the time, I was using an axe to put holes in the hood so I could tie it down. So
yeah, because your dad was old school. He ran back in the day, and that's what he did. When he ran, that's what everybody was doing.
Yeah.
So you got you got a lot of seat time in the front wheel drive cars.
Yeah.
Look, did you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're moving along. How long was it? How many shows did you run before you got your first win?
Oh, I want to say it was my third show. I got my first win.
What kind of car was it?
I want to say it was like a 96 Grand Prix.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure on the years of the little cars, but it was like one of the last years before they started getting the aluminum subframes up front and everything.
It was a W body.
Yeah.
Yep. So, how would you describe your first win? How did that make you feel?
It was exciting. I mean, Winston Speedway, I don't know if anybody's ever been there, but any given night, regardless of the class, you could be running against 30, 40 cars.
Yes.
And Oceana Auto would always bring 10 cars. There's 7 drivers that live within probably a half mile of the track there. So you'd have just a bunch of random people, and especially once the front wheel drive started getting popular over there, it was just everybody was running them.
Right.
And I want to say the first show I ran, we were still running like the Dodge minivans with the front wheel drive cars because at the time nobody knew that a front wheel drive minivan could go 40 miles an hour across the track with the back end and pack in aluminum
and not bend.
That first derby I ran was probably 25 cars and half of them were probably minivans. So it was just kind of running and hiding for my life. And then all of a sudden you look around and nobody was left moving. And there was one other car trying to get out of the corner and I just hit him. And it was a minivan and his strut broke because they're all aluminum up front, or his cradle and everything. And it was done. And I was like, wait, what just happened? I just won. I was like, all I did was run and hide because these guys were trying to kill me.
I have actually had full-size drivers that have derbied in the Pro Mod class tell me that minivans actually hit harder than the Pro Mod full-size cars do.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've ran Turkey Derby Limited years after when they're what seems like kicker cars, and they're cutting a little bit to get into that class. And I've ran against those cars, and I've gone back-to-back in minivans with people, and I would not recommend getting in a minivan and going back-to-back with anybody ever. Yeah,
they go so fast.
Yeah.
They're like the old wagons. You're out there going 40 miles an hour in a 5,000-pound vehicle.
Yeah.
It's Whiplash Nation. I never thought I would see the day where like the gut and go class is actually more rough than the Pro Mod class, but it's actually kind of turning into that because there's no gearing in those things. People are out there going 40 miles an hour backwards, and it's just a sudden stop.
Yeah.
So you decided, okay, I'm going to start running big cars. About what year was this?
Probably, I think it came up in my memories the other day because it was Oh, probably about 2016 Turkey Derby, 2017, when first summer that we started running big cars.
What was your first big car?
Well, to be technically speaking, I ran Mount Pleasant in a '79 Ford Granada.
Okay.
And it was a four-door, so the wheelbase was just too big to be able to take it to any other compact show. So I went and ran with the big cars over in Mount Pleasant, and yeah, it was weird because the front end of that thing was softer than any other little car I've ever ran, and then the back end had leaf springs on it, so I just drove underneath everybody.
Was it a front wheel drive car with leaf springs?
No, it was a rear wheel drive.
Oh.
Granadas they have a straight six in them.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, so we ran there. The Mount Pleasant was still having heats at the time, and then Mount Pleasant is end of July, beginning of August usually.
Yep.
So then we went from there, and come like October, me and my buddy had this great idea of wanting to go run Turkey Derby in a big car because I had found a Crown Vic, he had found a Buick Roadmaster, and it sounded like a cool idea. So yeah, I think it was the end of 2016 that we decided, let's go run. And you show up and people are running tipped Vics that I didn't even know what a tipped car was at the time. I had seen them before, but I didn't know how to do it, didn't know anything about it. And it was definitely showing up to a big show like that after you just run all these county fairs, running little cars and stuff. It's like you just drive in with a truck and a trailer, and you kind of look around and you're like, oh, this is where I want to be. This is cool.
Right.
Like the atmosphere was just bar none. It's better than walking into a giant football stadium with a sold out crowd or.
Yeah, it had the big show atmosphere.
Yeah.
Right. And
so
which you
we
started
were kind of hooked at that point.
Yeah, I mean, that running a big show so early on in your career usually isn't the case. I mean, a lot of guys run. Well, I mean, yeah, you ran compacts for a while, but it seems like your second big car went to a big show.
Yeah. Yeah, and we didn't even know what we were getting ourselves into because my dad and his buddies actually had went down a few years prior when Tim Tygart was still alive, and he had helped them do inspecting and stuff. And my dad was like, oh, yeah, it's a pretty good-sized fall show, And I'm not sure what year they started televising the Turkey Derby, but you show up and you're on TV, and then all of a sudden all these people are messaging you, hey, I hear that Derby's live stream. How can I watch it? I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm going to be on TV? And yeah, I couldn't imagine anybody else because I talk to a lot of kids that want to get into driving now because they see me I'm younger or whatever. So a 21, 22-year-old kid, that I might have known for a long time now. They're like, hey, Derbying looks fun. How can I get into it? I would never be like, oh, well, go buy a car and go run at the fair, then go buy another car and go drive 5 hours away and run against a bunch of other people from another state. I would never tell somebody that.
Right.
But,
But hey, I mean,
just how the cards got drawn.
If you're if you're gonna go big, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, didn't fare out so well at Turkey Derby.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was your?
Ended up like fourth or fifth or something. Just stuffed in a corner by a two-door. I believe it was a two-door Lincoln, and he just hit me like wide open.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, whoa.
Was it a one heat deal?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you got down to fourth or fifth then.
Yeah. I mean, there was only probably 23 cars in the heat that year.
Only?
At
Okay.
Turkey Derby for their limited weld class, which we thought we were going for because on their website it was like they had street stock, which was basically their gut and go, I think. And then they had like limited weld, and we didn't even know what we were going to go run for, but we saw we could run a big car there, so we really just went in. And in that class, you had a variety of everything. You had tipped 98-202s with hump plates, full cages, cradles, and everything. And then there was some dude in a unibody car. I don't even know what it was, and he had no cage in it at all.
Right.
So it was like there's a giant variety of things going on here. We don't know what we're gonna do.
Right.
And we'll just go see how it fares.
Yeah, and getting down to fourth or fifth in a heat like that, actually, I mean, that's actually pretty good. I didn't
Yeah,
think that the way that story was going that you did very good, but I mean, that's pretty remarkable being out of state and doing well like that.
yeah.
Usually you
Seems
get a.
seems to be my kryptonite, fourth or fifth place when I go out of state to these big shows. Which, I mean, I can't really complain because the whole reason I go to those shows is because you can run against the same people at your county fair or whatever, or I could drive across state. But either way, by the time if I drive across state going over to say Inlay City, that's a 4 or 5 hour trip for me. Or I can drive straight south and go 4 or 5 hours, and yeah, it's bigger shows. Or you start getting to like Sturgis and Evansville and stuff, and that's 8, 9 hours. But that's a couple years down the road that we decided to do that.
Right.
But Greentown, Indiana's 3.5 hours from my doorstep, I think, and South Bend is 2.5, 3 hours. So it was like, oh, do we go run across state where we're still in state, or do we just go south?
Right.
And
Yeah, you're down in the southwest corner of the state, so really, I mean, like an hour or two, you're in Indiana.
yeah,
Yeah. And out of state shows for you really aren't that far away.
yeah. I mean, like I said, it's the same as if we were driving across the state to go run. I mean, I ran Midland team show, probably 2017, 2018, and that, I mean, if you think about it, Midland, Bay City area over there, it's not that far away, but all of a sudden we're 2.5, 3 hours over there. It's like, oh, this is actually kind of a trip.
Yeah, Midland Bay City for me is like a half hour. You guys are way down. You guys are down in that corner of the state. So when you got back in Turkey Derby, in my mind, if I went down there and did as well as what you did, I mean, I would be pretty happy. I mean, I would want to be going back next year and seeing if I could win the whole thing, especially if you had a car underbuilt like how you did.
Yeah.
So what was your next move after Turkey Derby? There, you came home. You did pretty well down there. What was your next step? What did you think?
Well, we came home. We had a group of like me and my brother and two buddies, and we were like, hey, we actually want to build derby cars. We can't really do it out of my buddy's mom's garage forever, So
Right.
we went and rented a barn, and then we planned on running South Bend the next year coming up because, like I said before, we all grow up over here, and you watched Ted Cooper battle it out with the Nugents their entire careers. So
And you wanted to be part of it.
what you wanted to go do was go run down south and at South Bend. So we planned on that. The first show, which was their spring bash or whatever, I went down there by myself because we all planned on it, but my buddy didn't get his car done or something like that. So I ended up going down there by myself. It was the same year that Dave Meyer just rolled over at Freedom Hall.
Yep.
Because his buddy Ross brought his Freedom Hall car there.
Yes.
So we're reading the rule set, and we're like, okay, it says stock, It says you can run a cradle, but I don't even know what a cradle is right now.
Right.
Like, I've never looked at a ski cradle up close,
Right.
And so it's like you can run a cradle, have a 2-inch gap, whatever. We're like, oh, so, we'll be fine going down there with just lower cradles. We cut the firewall out, and we should be all right. And then we show up, and Ross and Dave are there with Dave's Freedom Hall car, and they're like, oh, yeah, see, Dave and Ross brought a car with a firewall cut out, too, which, come to looking at it now, Dave Meyer could drive a wet paper sack out and beat some dude in a Pro Mod car.
Yeah. Yes, he could. Yes.
So at the time, it made us feel all right, but then all of a sudden we start getting hit by cars that have cradles pressured back into them, trans braces and everything, and you're like, holy smokes, these cars are hard.
Right.
And it's on cement down there, and the old school track where they used to run up on the front stretch, but then their new track is like basically in a hole. So they got concrete walls and then dirt pushed up behind them. So when you're on the cement and then all of a sudden you get smacked into it, and you kind of look around, and you're like, what's going on?
Yeah, it puts you out. It takes your breath away there for a minute. Takes the wind out of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how did you wind up doing? How did you place?
Not good at all. Probably
not good at all.
Probably 10th. They put I want to say 30 cars into their one small track down in the bottom, and all of a sudden you'd get a big shot, and then all of a sudden you'd be stuck on 3 cars for another couple minutes because it was just so crowded. And when Ross ended up winning it, I was watching him the whole time. He was sitting right in the middle. I was trying to hide, stay on the corners, try to stay away from a big shot, not sitting in the middle of the action. But then I was watching that. I was like, he stayed right in the gist, and I was sitting on the wall, and that's the only way people could get shots is pushing somebody up against the wall. So they ended up blowing every single tire off that car, and I was shoved up in the corner, and I was sitting there watching it, and I was like, wow, this is a little bit different now.
Yeah,
it's starting to get serious.
Kind of like a step up, even from Turkey Derby. But Turkey Derby kind of was that way too. It just worked out a little bit better for you. But at South Bend, you didn't have as good of luck.
Yeah, there wasn't as much room to hide at South Bend. Turkey Derby was cool because you had all those cars that were built. But Turkey Derby fashion is a huge track,
Yes.
It started off as a football field long, and now you go there and it's like 2 football fields wide and still over 100 yards long. Now it's probably 150 yards long now at Turkey Derby. But it's always been the Turkey Derby fashion to have a big track because they always run one and done heats with 30, 40 plus cars.
Right. It's a cleanup show. So there's always a good turnout, and everybody shows up because that's really the only place to run in November.
Yeah.
Right. So South Bend went down there, didn't fare out so well. Kind of realized, okay, if we're going to compete, we might want to build our cars a little bit better. So what was your next step from there?
Well, the car that I had, the one I had taken to Turkey Derby and then South Bend, was still good. The back end had just packed in, We tried dimpling in it, but we didn't know what we were doing. We figured, throw a couple hammer marks on the top and it'd bend. So it packed like an old school Vic where the back bumper was just straight up in the window.
Right.
So we pulled it down, played it back on the humps, and then we pulled the front end down a little bit and played it up front. And we were like, okay, this will actually give us something to fight with. And my 2 other buddies, Danny Martin and Cameron, they were like, okay, we'll go 2 this time,
Right.
And then all of a sudden, we didn't even know who all was going, but we ended up going down there, and we had probably 6 or 7 guys from Michigan down in South Bend, and we went down there figuring it was going to be a one-and-done heat. So then in the drivers' meeting, they're like, okay, we got roughly 40 cars here tonight, 30, 40 cars. We're going to run 2 heats, top set 6 or 7 come out of each heat, and then we're going to run a 14, 15-car main. And it was like, everybody's like, oh, well, none of us brought parts. They're like, okay, so the only thing you can do in between heats is put gas in your car. You can't touch anything else. So, we're down there. I'm like, okay, I got a car. We threw some plates on it. It should be pretty strong, And right in the heat, I got smoked, and the front passenger side rail just started jacking up. And I was like, oh, look around. There's people just going everywhere, craziness. And it was like, okay, well, just stay calm. You might be able to, limp your way out of this. So, comes down to it. It was me, Chad Nugent, Dalton Winterow.
Yep.
And a few other drivers that made it out of that heat, and we were going on. So the other heat had Mike Lipka, Mike Nugent, Cameron Patterson. It was just there was a lot of good cars coming out of that heat because those guys pretty much went out there and got down to business, took out a bunch of other people, and they all came out with straight cars. And I was sitting there, and I was like, oh, well, this is cool. I can't even go try to tug on the front end of my trailer and try to bring it back down. I got to go back. I can go put gas in my car, and I got to come right back to the line,
Right.
So we went out there, and I just started hiding. And then all of a sudden, I noticed a car that you could hear it revving. It was a pretty nice motor, and so you could hear it coming across the track. And it was one of those things you start looking around, where is that coming from? And it was like, okay, I can't see anybody flying across the track. And then all of a sudden, you figure out who it was. And there was a car on the other side of the track, and you could tell the tranny was slipping. I was like, okay, I'm going to go over there, and I'm going to start just poking at that car because I don't have anything to fight with, but I know if I go poke at that guy, he's burning up a tranny right now. He's not going to be able to whip that thing around and just obliterate my stuff,
Right, yeah, find a weakness.
I just started poking at it, and I can remember it clear as day. The guy was sitting there just getting mad, flipping me off, telling me to back up, and I was like, dude, I have nothing to fight with here. I'm sitting here trying to poke at you so that way these other guys don't kill me.
Right.
And so instead of coming down to it, looking around, there's 5 or 6 cars left. And I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. And it was I mean, it's South Bend, but it was just one of those atmospheres, you know. You got Lipka's, Nugent's, everybody like that on the track, and then all of a sudden you're looking around, and you're like, okay, we might be able to do something here.
Right.
And it came down to 4 cars, myself and Kurt Hall's son Lucas tied for 3rd, and then they came out and Mike Lipka and Mike Nugent were battling it out, and they came out and disqualified Mike Nugent for something. I don't remember what it was, but I was told that, you know, that's how it goes. They do post-race inspections and stuff down there.
Right.
And they ended up disqualifying them. So it was like, oh, cool, you know. They're giving us second place money now, and we're down here. And the guy that beat, technically the one car ahead of me, Mike Lipka, and he's got a full ski cradle, and his stuff's cool. That's what I want to get, you know.
Right.
But at the time, I'm still in college, going to school, so it was just that was at that point, I knew what I wanted to do.
Yeah, you wound up second
because
that
I
night.
saw Nugent's with running guards and ski cradles, and Lipka running a Baldwin with his ski cradle and everything, and I was like, those cars are legit. That's something I want to do, you know.
Right. You wound up getting second that night.
Yeah, so they ended up paying me for second place when they disqualified Mike Nugent there. Like I said, I don't even remember what was going on. I sat there in my car, dude. My belly rails were dragging on the cement, and I remember watching videos of it where you can see the spars coming just from the belly rails dragging on the ground.
Right.
So I didn't have a car to fight with at that point, and then all of a sudden I stalled, and it was nosed up so far that the ground battery cable ended up ripping off the starter, and that's why it wouldn't start back up. And it was hot too, because I mean, like I said, I was nosed up. I was hitting with the sway bar, not even the bumper anymore. So everything was hot. Like I went to go grab like the ground cable to try to hook it back up afterwards. That thing's just super hot. And like I said, just looking around at everything else that was there, it was just like, okay, this is what I want to do. Whether I build to a car like that, I want to get something where I can drive like that. You know, whether it's a motor that can get you out of a bad situation, or
better equipment.
Not a whopped out 350 that is cool because it runs forever, but you can't do anything with it.
Right.
So
so
that was like the coming to Jesus moment of this is what I want to do, you know.
Your defining moment
smack
of
you in the face.
Yeah, your defining moment of I want to, this is the direction I want to go in Derby.
Mm-hmm.
So you were at that show. There's a lot of awesome cars there, a lot of awesome drivers, and did pretty good. So going from there, I'm assuming, is that when you got the guard?
No, I was still in college, and I was still, probably for another year, I just kept running the same motor, but then I bought a rear end with some gears in it, so I at least had something, you know, be able to move around a little quicker instead of running, you know, like 273 highway gears on a track, you know. So I started running a little more, and for the next year and a half, I just got beat on. Because at that point, you know, my dad, everybody that knows him on Facebook or whatever, he's proud of everything that he has in life. Because of everything that he's done, he's proud of what he has. He's proud of his kids, you know, their accomplishments. So my dad was on Facebook, and he was like, oh, yeah, my son went down to South Bend, and he got second place money, blah, blah, blah. So then anywhere I go from that point, these people are like, oh, that must be Todd's son. He's been posting about on Facebook, like, we're going to go tear him up. So it just seemed like for like the next year and a half, I couldn't figure out like how to build a decent car, you know?
Just like a lot of rough luck.
Yeah.
Right.
I couldn't figure out what these people were doing because, like I said, my dad hadn't derbied since 2012,
right,
2010, somewhere in that time frame. So you're missing 4 or 5 years of the golden age of derbies, because I remember looking at derby cars in 2008 and then looking at them, like, we'd still go watch shows, but they progressed so much starting 2008. You know, my dad started to get out of it a little more every single year. And the last year he ran, I think he only ran one show. So it was one of those things. I was like, okay, well, I haven't watched my dad build these cars, but I know I want to do that. And we kept watching these shows, and it was like, oh, those cars are getting cooler and cooler, you know. So that's the golden age of when it was getting popular. The We Crash forums are blowing up of all these things different people are doing, you know. And you can still go back to this day, and you can read all the forums from, I can't even think of who would be on there, but you can still read the forums of all of these great drivers, you know.
Stroby was big. Tude was
what
big.
the tips that they would say back in the day. Like, I believe Joker's on there.
Joker, yep.
Ziz was on there at one
Ziz,
point,
yep,
I think.
Yep.
And you can just kind of see, like, and you can almost have an image in your head of how all the derbies that they ran went down. And then all of a sudden, you get people on there starting talking about geometry of how to set up a car. If you're running a stock car, what you want your bumper heights at to be like semi-symmetrical, so that way you can move from that point on, and that's the best geometry way to be able to set up a car, so that way it bends the way you want it to, you know?
Yeah.
So I started reading these, and I'm like, okay, yep. I still have no clue what these guys are doing, but I'm going to start trying a couple different things. And then I had some buddies, Adam Edwards, and then the Couturiers from over here.
Yep.
They used to be called Bad Company Inc.
Yep.
So I had known them my whole life growing up because I watched them derby when my dad was derbying and everything throughout their years. They got out of it for a while. And I was like, hey, guys, like, I really just don't know what I'm doing. So then the first one, me and Adam helped me build the car. And we were running just distributor protectors and stuff. But we were like, I was like, I'm going to try some pressure, you know. Adam told me to do all these other things, but I'm gonna take a porta power. I'm going to jack this thing right back in the firewall.
Right.
Well, I'm running a distributor protector with no training brace. So the pressure on the firewall was cool, so the car was hard for a little bit, you know. But then I ended up just blowing the bell housing apart on it.
Right.
So then I was like, okay, well, what can we do from here?
Time for a trans brace.
Yeah. If I want to run a stock show, I'm not going to run a distributor protector at all, because to me that was hurting me more than it was helping me. So then we went back to cutting firewalls out, and that's what I stuck with for quite a few years there. I mean, I ran Turkey Derby one time in between there. I bought a car from Brandon Wilkinson, Team Yee down there.
Yep.
And I ran that, and it was a pretty hard car for what I had. But then all of a sudden, you start getting drivers that were bringing other stuff, and it was like, oh, they got. At this point, I had a distributor protector, lower cradle, and then I bought one of the slide over trans braces.
Yep.
So, to me, that car was harder than any other car that I'd ever ran at that point.
Right.
And it was like, okay, I can start using this, and all of a sudden, you brake steering, and it came down to it, and then all of a sudden, I think it was Tim Sonnenberg ended up winning that year.
Yes.
And he just waxed me.
With there was
with the front end.
Yeah,
and
there was like 54 cars on the track.
My floorboards were like pushing up, so my knees are coming closer.
Oh, okay.
And this car was tipped at the cross, remember, not at the boxes.
Right.
So I was like, this is really weird. I don't know what's going on. And then he hit me one more time, and I just lost all gears. And I was like, what just happened? Like, I can't. I know I didn't just blow the bell housing off. You know, I got a trans brace on it now.
Right.
Well, I didn't break the bell housing. I cracked the case all the way down the side, because you're getting hit with a 1,200-pound cradle and a full steel bell and everything that's all pressured up in there, even tighter than you can get a distributor protector with a trans brace, and it was blowing my stuff apart.
Right.
So then I was like, okay, I ran one of these like hard cars or whatever. I'm gonna take a step back. It's starting to get expensive, you know, buying built trans and everything. I'm gonna take a step back, and I'm gonna just run stock cars, like a motor swap per se, not like street stock, but like.
Right.
That's when I started running like Dixon shows.
Yep. Bone stock Dixon rules.
Yeah.
And you're, I want to say, pretty well known for running down there. I mean, you run pretty much every show he has.
Yeah, I mean, it started in 2017 or 18, running this fall show. The last year he had it indoors down there, and I went down there completely by myself, running.
Yes.
And it was just like, this is something I want to do. I want to go drive somewhere like that, because like I said before, it's, if I go run any shows for my dad, if I end up doing any somewhat decent, it's always, oh, you cheated, you did this or you did that.
Yep.
And it was like, okay. So that was my choice of places to run, was I sign up for something like that to where I can plan it out and run. So I went down there and I was doing pretty good. And then all of a sudden, you know, just my lack of experience still comes down to it. 5 cars left.
Mm-hmm.
Dude hits me halfway across the track in the rear end. And I turned around. I'm like, oh, what an idiot, you know? Like, this dude just blasted me in the back end. And I'm not even looking for it at this point because I was looking backwards, looking at this guy just blaring it, like
right.
blasting me.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, my head feels like it comes out the window because I hit the cement block because I wasn't even paying attention on what was going on in front of me because this dude just hit me so hard.
Right.
Collapsed the whole passenger side rail from behind the AR back to the box, just accordion did.
Right.
And so I couldn't move from that point because that tire was just stuck right up against the box.
Right.
So then I was like, okay, like, this is fun. I enjoy running these shows, you know. That's my type of build that I want to run.
Yep.
And that's what I'm going to stick to unless I ever go buy a full cradle to where I want to actually invest some time and some money into a full weld car, you know.
Right.
So, yeah, like I said, like you were saying, I went and ran those shows. And I mean, it was never about winning those shows because I was going down there by myself. I wanted to go there to be able to learn that experience, you know, because at the time when I started running for Dixon, I was 21. I was like, okay, I'm a young kid. That's what I want to do. I want to run against the best of the best without spending all this money.
And you want to learn, you know, you want to learn first and then spend later.
What was that? You broke up.
I said you want to learn first and then you want to spend later.
Yeah, I want to get some seat time in, and I wasn't getting seat time in. Always buying new trainees or buying new parts because I was breaking them running these other classes.
Right.
So, yeah, next two years or whatever, that's pretty much all I ran. I would run the hometown shows and then one of the promoters in Michigan State Championship just to run up here, you know.
Oh, was that unique, Jim Trolley?
Yeah.
You got that win, didn't you? You won that show?
Yeah. There was pretty good turnout. I went there thinking it was going to be like our fair because I just won our fair that year. I was like, oh, you know, it'll be like 10, 12 cars. I'm going to take the same car I took the River City Rampage and rolled over in.
Yep.
Took the Ludington one. I was like, I'm just going to throw another plate on it, and I'm going to take it there. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, okay. I probably should have built something new. And some guy from Illinois just blasted me in the back end, flung around, and I looked back at him. And he was like hooked back there, so when I started backing up, I was trying to push him up into a situation where I could just poke at him. And then all of a sudden, some other guy came flying across the track, smoked him while he's hooked on my back end, and my steering column just falls out. I broke the center U-joint, and it was just hanging there. So I was sitting there like, oh, okay. I've seen tons of people talk about driving with no steering. Let's see if it's something that you can actually do. So ended up coming down and came down to like 3 cars, and I thought they had me. They were just beating on me on a wall. And I was like, okay, like this is where it ends. This is cool, you know? Like my time and effort going other places has paid off.
Right.
And all of a sudden I was sitting there just waiting for the right hit to knock me loose. And they just like bumped me, and I came back, reversed right out of there. And then one of the other cars came and just hit me, and then all of a sudden he went up in a bunch of smoke, and I was looking at him, and I was just sitting there. I was like, all right. So I backed up and hit him a couple times in the front quarter panel. And I was like, okay, now there's 2 of us. Now what, you know? Because at this point, the only big car show I had ever won was our hometown fair against 12 cars.
Right.
So I was like, okay, well, what's next? Like, how do I get to this guy? And I started thinking in the back of my head, I was like, okay, he also has to come to me because I just hit this other car last. I was like, so I'm going to sit here and I'm going to let him come to me because I can't really do anything. Hopefully he spins me straight and to a point where we can actually go at it a little bit, you know,
right,
for as much as I can with no steering.
Right.
And then all of a sudden he was just coming at me like full speed. And I was just thinking in my head, to the year that Dave Meyer won the kicker class at Turkey Derby.
Yep.
And he was in a black HD, which I doubt it was a full kicker build to true kicker standards,
Right.
But again, it's Dave.
It's Dave.
It came down to some guy. I can't even think who it was, but the guy was in a car that looked like, it could drive through a cement wall to me at the time, So I was sitting there, I was like, okay, I remember that. Dave just sat there. The guy hit him, and he let him bury himself. I was like, I'm going to see if that works. This guy's going to hit me as hard as he can. I'm going to line it up to a position where it's not going to hurt me. Let him hit me in the doors or something.
Right.
And it just so happened that dude got buried right there. I backed up, was able to bounce off the wall, get my car back straight, and come back and just tap him for the win. And I was like, oh, that was cool.
Dave was with you there that night.
Yeah, so I was just, at this point, things are starting to come together in my head, watching all these different shows. So
yeah, the experience is starting to pay off.
Yeah.
Right.
But then the very next show after that, I go back to Wicked. And you were there because your old man, and Shane rolled up in the camper.
Yep.
And we were talking to you or whatever. And you were like, oh, how do you think it's going to go tonight? And I was like, probably not good, man. I was like, I'm just running the show.
Oh, I know the show you're talking. That show was a good time.
Decent year.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, Trevor Jones comes flying off the line. Just laying into me. And at the time, I'm thinking in my head, I talk to Trevor quite frequently now, but at the time I'm like, what is this dude's problem?
Yep.
I don't even know who he is.
Yep.
But now, if you go watch any video of Trevor Jones, it's just how he does it,
That's how he is.
But at the time, I was just thinking, I was like, what is going on? And so it came to a couple points, so I was like, okay, he's coming at me just nuts. Like, I'm going to try to line him up on the door, or I'm trying to like scoot out of the way and let him just barely miss me. And a couple of times he got up on the wall, and then all of a sudden the whole buddy thing started hitting me, and I was like, okay, these guys have friends now at this point.
Yes.
And I run these shows quite frequently.
Yes.
Not that I'm winning, but they're starting to know who you are at that point.
Right.
They're not going to let you fly under the radar anymore.
Right.
So all of a sudden Trevor's on parks on a dirt berm because, like I said, he was just driving at 80 miles an hour around the entire track, it seemed like.
Yeah, on fire.
Yeah, and so I was just looking there. I was like, okay, he's out of the way. That's cool. Just keep him over there. And then all of a sudden, next thing I know, somebody got him off a wall, and he's coming right back doing the same thing. I was like, oh my gosh.
He's invincible.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that it was what I needed at that point, because you go keep running those shows, you do somewhat decent, and then all of a sudden you start winning local shows, you start to get a big head a little bit, and you're like, oh yeah, like I won now, like I should be all right. And I needed something like that just to like smack me, because then I was like, okay, I still have a lot of growing to do.
Yeah.
I have a lot more things that I need to do at this point.
Yeah.
Because this guy's just handing it to me. And then it ended up, he smoked me a few times, and I'm not sure what happened, if they broke him off because it was a red flag or something.
Yeah.
But he got me in the radiator, and I was like, what do I do now? Just try milking it out, And it was at that point, I was like, okay. I texted Jeremy Gard afterwards. I was like, I'm glad I bought this motor because I got hit 10 minutes into the Derby, no water, and it's still running.
So okay, you run guard power then.
Yeah.
When did you get your guard motor?
That would have been that summer would have been the first year that I ran it. So
okay.
I got it. The first show I ran it was River City Rampage, and my training cooler was leaking, and I ended up with no reverse, sitting in a corner, and Corey Schmidt hit me wide open with a bent front end and just rolled me right upside down. And I was like, oh.
First Derby, you're on your roof.
Yeah.
With the new motor.
First brand new drivetrain,
Yep.
So I was sitting there and I was like, I don't know how I didn't have reverse. Brand new training. And then all of a sudden I'm looking in there and I'm like, okay, there's oil that came out of the dipstick, whatever, from being upside down. I was like, where's all this training fluid coming from? So we started it up and I was like, oh, great. Like, I just toasted a brand new train because the line was leaking.
Oh.
Well, thankfully, the tranny was good. It just was out of fluid.
Right.
But So then that teaches you something to check over every single thing the day before you go to a derby, you know?
Yes, always. Yes.
Because at that point, you know, I'm starting to buy nice stuff, and I think that's what's going to carry me.
Yes.
Because I've seen all these other people do it.
Yes.
But
So
frankly, it's not what does it. There's a whole million other factors that go into derby. And
yes, there is.
As much as it'd be nice to be able to go out there and spend a bunch of money and just win everything, it's just not how it goes.
Yes. There's a lot to it. You know, you almost have to make it a lot of your life if you want to be successful, especially at a show like Wicked or Turkey Derby. You know, you need kind of other top tier drivers to kind of flip you, you know, give you a chance out there.
Yep.
Kind of give you a nod almost.
Yeah.
So, you know, I love Derby vendors just as much as I do the game itself. What do you have to say about Guard Performance?
Motors have never failed me. They run hot for a long time, and Jeremy, great customer service. If I ever have an issue, you know, hey Jeremy, I let this carburetor sit for a year since the last time I ran it because of COVID. This thing's not running right.
Right.
What do you want me to do? He's like, oh, just send it to me. I'll send you another one, or I'll get that one, see if it's something wrong with it internally. And if it's a quick, easy fix, otherwise I'll build you another carburetor, get it sent right back out to you. So as far as performance-wise, there's no complaints. And customer service, he's great. But he's to a point now where he has people that he knows, and that's what he does. He's not out there mass-producing motors anymore like he did.
Right.
5-10 years ago.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you know,
I just happened to get a hold of him at the right time and be able to get one in, and I waited 6 months for it because growing up, that's what
everybody had.
That's what I watched everybody around here run. That's what Josh Engelbart used to run.
Yep.
Adam Edwards, you know.
Yep.
All the guys that I grew up in my hometown looking up to, that's what they were running. So at that point, I was like, okay, I want one. I don't care how long I have to wait for it.
Right, absolutely. Now, I watched you run Turkey Derby. It was a couple years ago now. You were out
the year right after that Wicked show where Trevor just beat on.
Yes, it was, and you're out there just lighting that thing up, and I'm thinking, you know, I like to think that I've been around some pretty loud motors in the Derby world, and that thing was opening up, and I was covering my ears from where I was standing on the track.
Yeah, for still running a 2-barrel Rochester on it, she seems to open up well.
You were putting on one heck of a show out there, and I was like, you know, I had to, maybe I looked a time or two at you. I was like, yeah, that's Logan. I'm like, that thing runs pretty good.
Yeah.
Just wanted to point that out. So you're not only you're age 24.
Yep.
You just turned 24.
Yeah. I guess not now. We're getting out of it in December, right before the New Year. So.
Oh yeah, okay. So
not 24 and a half.
Not 24 and a half. But you're not only.
Once I hit 25, that's all. It's all downhill from there.
Oh, let me tell you that.
Waiting for it.
Wait until you hit 28. It gets even better.
Yeah.
But you're not only at age 24. You're not only running a lot of big shows and honestly contending. You're also an inspector for TNT.
Yeah.
And I know this because you inspected my car.
Yeah.
So can you give me a little bit of background on what it's like to be around derbies from an inspector approach? Also, kind of what's different between driving and inspecting?
It teaches you a lot on how to inspect the guy that's looking at your car, because as every single driver knows, there's times you want to look at the inspector and be like, what are you talking about? Right?
Right.
And so it teaches you that point, because you get people that will call me 10 o'clock the night before a derby, and they're just asking you questions and questions and questions about rules. They're like, hey, what about this rule? What about this rule? What about this rule? So it taught me to take that from the inspecting point back to a driver standpoint, to be able to, as a driver, go through every single rule on a rule sheet and be able to dissect it, you know? And even to this day, I mean, there's some stuff, like, we're building for Spring X right now. I sit there and I call Toby and I'm like, hey, what's up with this rule? I really don't even know what this means.
Right.
So, but it's something that's on the rule sheet. So inspecting and seeing all the the different ways people use things, it makes you want to ask questions and know from somebody else's rule set.
Well, we've said before on the podcast, you almost have to be a lawyer to write a set of rules anymore because every little word counts. It's almost like, do I get a bumper shock and a plate, or do I get a bumper shock or a plate?
Yeah.
And that, and that phrase right there can make or break a car.
Yeah.
Is it the factory bracket for this car, or is it any factory bracket?
Yeah.
Can they be fabricated brackets, or do they actually have to be a factory bracket?
Yeah.
Because certain shows allow, a fabricated bracket, but it's, if it's like a replica bracket, almost kind of like a replica bumper, they let them in, and you're like, man, that's a half-inch bracket. I didn't know we could run those, and I'm sitting here with a set of stock caddy brackets.
Yeah.
Just a lot of things anymore really need to be covered. And I'm sure there's a lot of discrepancies, but at the same time, I'm sure there's a lot of drivers that kind of do that on purpose to try to sneak their stuff in.
Yeah. Yeah, because, the same thing. I've sat there, called up a promoter or inspector, if they have a separate inspector and it's not the promoter doing it. And it teaches you to ask different questions about it, because it may say it's a bumper plate, but it's just in replacement of the bumper shock, and it's not to be used in one spot. It's up to you where you want to put it, as long as it's from point A to point B.
Right. I know they're really talking about.
If you just sat down and read them without knowing anything about it, it tells you it's a bumper plate. It's starting here.
Yes.
So
yeah, I know the rule you're talking about. I'm not going to say what it is, but yeah, I know the rule you're talking about. And you know what? There are things in the rules like that you kind of got to be on top of, and it's like, oh, okay, so that's how they do that here.
Yeah, and it makes me appreciate it more, because that's what I tell people all the time. People will call me and they'll be trying to bend motor swap rules, right? That's what we call our bone stock stuff, because I don't believe it's a bone stock. I believe that's a motor swap build. It's exactly what it is.
Right.
And people will be like, oh, well, it says I can run a training brace just for protection, but it has to be free floating. So I can't run it tight up against the cross member? I'm like, I'll sit there and I'll be like, okay, guys, it says clear as day, it has to be free floating or with a factory mount and bushing.
Right.
I was like, if you want to push it to a point, I was like, there's limited weld where you can take the rules, you can take your plates and put them where you want. You can get creative with it. And that's really what I like about the limited weld classes. Because last year, I think we put on the only big car shows in Michigan, and just seeing all the different builds that came in there, it was like, okay, people are calling me, oh, well, I ran this car at Metal Mayhem, what can I do to run it?
Right.
I was like, okay, well, we allow this plate, cut this here, do that there, and it's just amazing to see the different comprehension of the way people do it, because that's what I believe the reason we have limited weld build classes these days,
Yeah.
Those are the classes for the builders, for the people that want to have the creativity.
Right.
To where if you're an old school driver, or you're somebody that really prides yourself on being able to make a car last all night, there's motor swap cars.
Right.
And then you got people that can drive the wheels off a motor swap car and drive the wheels off of a limited weld car.
Right.
But then you get people that want to drive a motor swap car to the floor because they don't want to put time into it.
Right.
And then they wonder why it bends and stuff. And then these people are the ones that are trying to push rules. And it teaches you, to get back to your original question about what I've learned from it or whatever.
Yeah.
It teaches you pretty much the different ways of doing things, and to basically respect every person on that track. Because at the end of the day, I might be out there and you see the person that lines up next to you, and they may not have the same parts as you. They may not build the car the same exact way as you. But at the same time, to run any car, even starting a gut and go car anymore,
right,
you're starting with a week's worth of work into it these days.
Right.
With the way people push rules and stuff.
Yep.
So it teaches you to appreciate all the time that people put in everything, because then all of a sudden, when you have 100 cars come across in front of you, you see each and every way that these people put their time away from their families into these cars.
Right.
So it has really helped me appreciate the sport more.
Yeah.
Because it's always something I wanted to do was, help my dad out with what he does. But I always wanted to have my own personal experience before just showing up and being like, hey guys, I'm going to tell you guys what to do. I've never ran these cars before.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to give you...
It gives you a different appreciation for it.
Yeah, I just want to give you a shout out. When I rolled up with my car, your first reaction was, okay, let's see if we can make these rules work. Because I had built that car to 3 sets of rules before I even brought it to your show. And you were like, you know what, we're going to do this and we're going to make that work. And then, you know what, you're good. And that's, you don't want to be too liberal with it, but you don't want to be too almost too strict with it either. And you personally have found a pretty good happy medium there with the way that drivers with the way that you work with drivers on the rules.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, like you said, 3 different rule sheets that you're building to, and which one are you going to run at the end of the day? Right. Especially with what's going on in the world right now. Right. The show that we're all building for next week could get canceled.
Well, I'll tell you this. That car ran at Urban Destruction one time, and then it ran USA Championship, and then it ran Croswell, and then it ran your show. It got built to 3 different sets of rules, and you were more than willing to comply with my car just simply because of that reason.
Yeah, because you think about it, you go look at USA rules, compare them to Wicked rules, and then throw it up in the air and grab our rule sheet. There is strengths and weaknesses to every single one of those cars, right, or every one of those rule sets when you get to that point. Right. You think about USA Derby Icons build, and they're limiting you on cage, but maybe they allow you a little more A-arms forward these days. Right. To where you go run Urban Destruction Wicked rules in a limited weld, they're metric cars.
Yep, you get a full cage.
You're allowed a whole lot of cage. Yep. That's strengthening a lot of that car.
And a 6-inch plate.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you're only allowed X amount of plates, and they can't butt up. You have to have a gap in them. Right. So you have different crush zones. Right. So you can really, if you start reading into different sets of rules, there's strengths and weaknesses to every single one. So as a promoter, as an inspector on a smaller base, you have to be able to accept every single one of them, because I want to see a big car show just as much as anybody else that runs them. Right. I want to see people being able to run, but I don't want to see showing up and somebody cutting a slice and a kicker to run, Right. Yeah, you want to keep it fair, but you also want to show, but you want to keep it fair. And that, I really got the sense last year that really you were all about the show. You were like, you know what? I want this car to run, so this is what we're going to do. And I did what you told me, and that was, as a driver, I can't really ask for any more than that. Yeah. Yeah, because if you bring a car built to really, on a national level, any true limited weld build, you can sit there, and even if it's overbuilt for something, you can sit there and trim little things all day until it gets to the rules that you want it to be. Right, absolutely. If you're sitting in the true limited weld, not jumping up to Pro Mod, not bumping down to a stock car, pretty much across the board, you could take a car from really any one of the major promoters, and you could take one and you could build it. If you're building for Wicked, you could take it and try to turn it into something else, because if somebody's going to allow it, they have strengths and weaknesses. So yeah, absolutely. Every promoter is different, every rule set is different, and honestly, that's always on purpose. They know what they're doing. Those guys promoting those big shows like that know exactly what they're doing. Whether they're trying to keep the sport safe, or they just want they just plain want the cars to bend, or however they write the rules or whatever. But I just wanted to give you a shout out on on the way that you're an inspector up there. I did notice that you being the age that you're at, you have a really, really good outlook on the sport. And honestly, I really hope there's a lot of young up and coming. I call you up and coming.
at age 24, I mean, that's just
still
kind
pretty
of
young.
the mentality. That's just the viewpoint that you're going to have there for a while. And honestly, I think that you're doing really well for your age. And it was really interesting tonight to hear the progression in modern day terms, because our last couple podcasts have been those drivers that started out in the early 90s and nobody had protectors then. So you could go grab an Impala for $50 and then, go to your local fair and compete. But this day and age, you're a long ways away. I mean, you've got about 10 or 15 years of building and driving before you're competitive at the highest level.
Yeah.
And it was probably the way that back then, but really, back then it was more driving than it was building, because the builds weren't nearly as prolific as they are now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that you're doing a lot in the game, and you're a young guy, and I really like that. I respect it. You're a really, really level-headed inspector, and I wanted to make that noticed. So
I appreciate that.
Have you listened to the first couple podcasts?
Yeah, I was actually listening to Ryan's about 2:00 in the morning last night. It popped up on Facebook as I was just getting ready to go out of the garage. And I was like, there's a couple more things I can do. I'm gonna turn it on the radio, and just listen to it and see what they have to say.
Okay, so Ryan.
Listen to the things that Ryan says about cars, and then even listening to Jack's, just all the different perspectives. And like you were saying, those guys started off running Impalas and Roundbacks, to where you asking me, and then all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, dude, I ran a Chevy Lumina for my first car.
Yeah, you bought your first your first derby motor off Marketplace.
Yeah.
Which, I'm probably not going to interview a lot of drivers that have done that, because
it's they started off and they had a derby motor in their car to begin with.
Well, right. But it's tough to become a somewhat prominent name as early as you have, just simply because you can attribute some of that to your dad being in the game, but it's just like me. I mean, my dad hadn't built for a lot of years when we started running either, so I know exactly what you're talking about. But you're doing a lot. I mean, you're running a lot of big shows. You're promoting. You're inspecting. You've got big shows planned out in the future. I just wanted to point that out about you. And you being a young guy. I mean, you should inspire other young guys to get into the sport.
Yeah.
So, if you listen to the end, this is my personal spin on the podcast.
Yeah.
I always get. Do you know what I'm about to do?
Yeah, your Big Ten.
Okay. Are you a sports fan?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you a west side of the state? Are you a Michigan State fan?
No, I'm a Michigan fan.
You're Michigan. You know what? I should know that because I watch. Oh my god, I knew that. But I had to have you tell the audience, right? Because you're always posting about U of M.
Yeah.
I think your post when they lost in March Madness was just epic. I'm like, oh boy. I'm like, yeah, Logan's gonna be pretty mad.
It was pretty devastating to see. Eight possessions, missed shots right at the end, but
pretty disappointing.
It happens.
Okay. So, just for the listeners, if you've never made it this far in the podcast, if I bored you, if you fell asleep, if Logan's carried you this far, the Big Ten is the conference that Michigan State play in, but there's actually 14 teams. And I actually found that out because it still has the 11 in the logo, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's B1G is their logo now.
Yeah. I actually had to look that up because the Big Ten used to be an 11 in the logo because there used to be 11 teams in it, but now there's 14. So, okay. Question number one. What's your favorite place to visit in Michigan?
Oh, I would have to say probably, I don't even know. Let's go with Traverse City, Petoskey area.
You can even pick a derby. What's your favorite derby to go to in Michigan?
My favorite derby to go to in Michigan is probably Berrien Springs because if you've never been there, it's pretty much an indoor derby for Michigan, but without being indoor, the sides are open.
Oh,
so you don't get the smoke in your eyes, but if it's raining or anything else, it's a full covered all the way around. My dad calls it Thunderdome. Yeah,
TNT brought the Unified Points Series to that show this year.
Yes.
That's going to be pretty exciting. Actually, I got to get Todd on here too and talk to him as well. But Okay, so I'm gonna ask you this. We've talked about your driving strategy, and you're a little bit of back and forth. I'll be honest with you. I mean, honestly, you put on a pretty good show, but you've also got some wins. So is it Mad Dog or winner?
Well, I would much rather win.
Okay.
I mean, unless I had a really bad showing and just really got embarrassed the show before, that's usually when I want to, like, give something to prove, or if I run locally and, at that point you really don't care and somebody's on there talk like people do on Facebook,
Yeah.
That's when I like to kind of, just prove a point. Like, winning doesn't really matter. It's nice to, but it's all about the sport at the end of the day. It's all about having fun.
Yeah, most of the time you're there to win, but here and there, you'll open it up.
Yeah.
Put on a show. Okay, so Metallica or Garth Brooks?
Garth Brooks.
Okay, not a rock fan, eh?
I mean, unless I'm in the garage. Like, if I'm just every day, I'm going to go with, like, Garth Brooks. But if I'm trying to do something at work or, like, build a car or something, I'm listening to more of a heavier
right
metal music.
So you're not headbanging Wednesday afternoon at 4:00.
Yeah.
Okay. You're a newer generation driver. So you probably are gonna say new, but is it new or old iron?
New iron. The oldest car I ran was that Granada. So
Right. Yeah, I figured that.
79, but I really prefer these 9802s out of everything I've ran. New style Lincolns, pretty much.
New style Lincolns, gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. Heavy build or bone stock?
I really like the bone stock shows, but I would really like more of a true pro stock build, like Bash for Cash's pro stock rules.
Okay, I'd have to read into those because I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah, they didn't have Bash for Cash last year, but 2 years ago, it was basically you start off tip, bumper shock, hump plates, body mounts, and the same 60-inch cage doors and stuff like that. So
right, you can do a little bit, but it's not overkill.
Yeah.
So you're kind of in between bone stock and heavy build then.
Yeah. I run a lot more bone stock shows just because you can build one in a week, but I would like to see more like a middle of the road build come along the way, so you actually have something to hit with.
Gotcha. Okay. I did change his questions up a little bit. What is your favorite kind of car to build? Derby.
Lincoln's probably.
Yeah. Yep. 9802 Lincoln. I know it kind of goes with it, but I mean, I figured I would ask that because I got a couple suggestions here in the last couple days. I never actually asked some of the drivers their favorite kind of car. I did ask what they've built, but I never actually asked their favorite kind of car. But next question is beer or whiskey?
Beer, Bud Light, unless I'm really trying to get in, get some stuff done mood, then I'm going to drink some Jack Daniels,
Well, I would be like the opposite. Like if I drink Jack, I'm not doing anything.
I drink Jack and I start to feel like, some Jack and Coke, and all of a sudden it starts running in your veins, But beer is kind of more of a casual drink for me.
Yeah. That's definitely the same way for me too. A1 or Worcestershire?
A1.
A1. Are you
A1 if, you're getting a steak that really you're getting a steak from Applebee's or something, you need an A1 sauce to make it have some flavor. But,
right.
If you know how to actually cook steak, I believe you shouldn't need any sauce.
Yeah. Actually, I do have a couple buddies with that same theory. Yeah, I mean, I think Jack actually said he's going to use ketchup before A1 or Worcestershire. So, hey, that's an open-ended question. You can say whatever you want.
Unless it's on, French fries or something like that.
Or a burger,
Ketchup goes on burgers, French fries, chicken tenders.
Not mashed potatoes. No, never.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're at a big show. You're out of state. You got your car there. You're driving at a big show. Are you getting a hotel or are you camping?
Depends if I'm going all the way down to Lake Sturgis. I got a good buddy that lives down there. We stay with him, Travis. Portland, I've stayed in hotels there for Turkey Derby, but the camping aspect, like at Portland, is a lot cooler. So
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of a
camping has a lot more of an experience to the Derby, and it makes it that much cooler. So I'd say camping.
Okay. Definitely advantages for both. Let's see here. So, well, I know you're pretty big into the big show scene, but you know there's always the local county fair feel. So, big show or county fair?
Honestly, I'd rather run a county fair.
Yeah, I was gonna say, kind of take a second. You know, you can't really beat the county fair show feel. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, but at the same time, like you think about your county fair over in Gladwin back in the day, it was almost a county fair big show feel. You had people like Rick Clark coming from Canada to run there.
Right.
That's really like the hometown fair that I come to think of when I think of fairs. So, I mean, as much as I love driving 2 miles to get into my fair, I like really any county fairs that there's any competitiveness to that, you know?
Right. You know, it's got to mean something to you almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like a county fair show, but it's got pretty good competition, almost like South Bend, almost. Or would you consider that a big show?
Yeah, I don't know. I would like thinking like Berrien Springs, USA Championship, South Bend, something like that, to where it's like not a big show, but you're a step above county fairs.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Because big shows, it seems to be, you know, there's a whole lot that goes on there, and it takes a long time to be able to even want to compete in it. It takes a lot of time, you know?
Right.
To where you can go to a county fair and you might have some dude standing on it for a half hour just lighting up everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. This always gets an interesting answer. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
No, not at all.
Not at all. You don't do the Hawaiian pizza scene.
No, and if my mom hears me say that, she'll probably be mad because she loves pineapple on pizza for some reason. But
okay.
I think it's a nasty thing.
I gotcha. Okay. You're a young guy. This might actually provide an entertaining answer. Blonde, brunette, or redhead?
Blonde.
Blonde? You're a blonde guy?
Blonde. Yeah, I mean like a dirty blonde.
Dirty blonde.
It's like almost, not like a dirty person, like a
darker, like
the
darker blonde. Yeah, I gotcha. It's almost like you got it right in you're like, yep, that's what I want there.
Not a blonde that's gonna be like, oh, ditzy blonde. not dark, super dark. You know,
you got to throw some brunette in there.
Not redheads because that's a whole another ball game there.
So you want a blonde, but just a little bit of brunette in there to even things up.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Okay. Okay. Do you play euchre?
No, I've never played euchre.
You have never played euchre?
No.
Oh my. Do you hunt?
I went hunt. The last time I went hunting was probably like 2 years ago.
Oh, okay. So you're not a big hunter then?
No.
I was gonna say that usually comes up around deer seasons. A lot of euchre gets played and everything.
Yeah, deer camp. I mean, I've been to some deer camps because drinking beer, hanging out with people. Not a whole lot of hunting actually gets done, but
a lot of drinking beer, a lot of playing euchre, but not for you. But it's almost like Escanaba in the moonlight. Okay, so last question. It's always good. It's the first time I'm doing it, but I figure it's going to be a good way to end. What's your proudest win and your favorite car built?
Proudest win would probably be my state championship win, just because the way it went down.
Yep.
No steering, and going into it expecting it to be a 10-car show or something, because you're still at that point. I was trying to build some confidence, running a big car, and that was kind of like my favorite moment.
Right.
My favorite overall finish would probably be Redneck Rumble 2 years ago. Well, not this past one, but the one before.
Yep.
we went there with myself, Adam, and Travis ended up taking second, and I got fourth or fifth, and it was just a good showing because you go run down in Sturgis, and it's Southern Illinois, Southern Indiana versus everybody else.
Yeah, pretty much.
So
yeah, those guys show up in droves for sure. Now, what was your favorite car? If you had a favorite car that you just, man, this thing won't die. I love this car.
It was a '89 Vic, the one that I rolled over in, and then I won 2 shows consecutive after that with, because
Nice.
everybody just kept saying to me, "Oh, like, I don't get how you keep a stock car around for so long." And I was like, "Well, like, first run really was not even a full heat, but yeah."
Right. No, I
It
got
was
you.
just the first like competitive car I completely built, that I feel like it went to a national show, and it was one car away from making the $10,000 feature, and then to win my hometown fair, which took my dad probably 15 years for him to win our hometown fair. It was just something that was cool because it gives me a little trash talk that I can say to my old man now.
Gotcha. You said you were one car away from running the 10. When you got rolled over at River City Rampage, that you were the last car out?
Yeah, I was the last car out.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
There was one other car that was stalled out over in the corner, so I was looking over at him when I got hit, just thinking that if they were going to count him out, and then
You'd be in the
I
feature.
rolled over,
Right.
and I had gas leaking and oil all out of my motor, and like I said, it was a brand new motor at that time, and I was like, we'll just save it for another day at this point.
Oh, yeah, that's unfortunate, man.
So, yeah. It would have been cool to be in that situation, which is really on my bucket list, to go to one of those big shows that has heats in a feature and be able to come out of a heat and go to the feature. So.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually, I mean, a lot of drivers haven't been able to do that.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you taking me back up through your. It's a short history, but again, that's the beauty of it. You're a young guy. You're doing a lot in the game. I wanted to get you on here just to see, what your mentality is of it and your outlook is on the game right now. Being your age, at age 24, can you give me, like, what do you think your outlook is going to be for the next 5 years for the game right here in Michigan? Where do you think Derby is headed?
Well, personally speaking of what I want to do in the state of Michigan, we're going to have a lot of front-wheel drive shows. Front-wheel drive shows will consistently bring 15 to 50 cars,
Absolutely.
Anywhere between there, you really can't tell.
Yep.
But in the state of Michigan, I'd like to see one of our shows, whether it's our team show or Jack's Championship, I want to see one of those shows become a national level show.
You want to bring a big show. You want to bring a big show to Michigan.
Yeah. And like I said, I don't care if it's us doing it or if it's Jim or if it's Jack. I just want it to be here because there's so many. Michigan gets overlooked so much. I mean, you think about it, people don't think of Ryan Stanogluski being from Michigan. They think of him as him and Jason Brodzinski are Ski Inc. and they're lighting people up at Blizzard Bash,
Right.
Or they think of, Blades, one drives a Cadillac, doing whatever he wants on the track,
Okay.
And the other one,
Okay.
you really don't know what you're going to get out of Jason, But at the end of the day, they're both really competitive drivers that are there. And then, I mean, you could go on for days, daily.
Yeah, in our first podcast.
Dave.
Yep. In our first podcast, I brought up the fact, if I said that Michigan had the 2 best builders, names come to mind. If I said Michigan has the best driver, a name comes to mind.
Yeah.
And I don't think people realize it because, we're flocking to big shows out of state, 6-8 hours away. And, a lot of the old Metal Mayhem crowd, when Mayhem was out in Illinois, were local guys. They were only going 15 minutes up the road to run at a show that had 300 cars at it. And none of us here have ever experienced that.
Yeah. And I just want to have that bigger show in Michigan because of all the times that people from Michigan have gone down there. Like you said, people are driving 30 minutes away. It would be cool to see what drivers would start to stand out in a national crowd out of Michigan when they're waking up that morning in their own bed,
Right.
and they're going to Derby that day.
Yeah. Haul the car home to your house and weld on it.
Uh-huh.
Right. Bring it home
and
overnight.
They're comfortable. It's their track,
Yep. And they know the promoter.
You think about it. How many times have we all ran in Sturgis? How many times has anybody here ran Capital City Carnage or Blizzard Bash? You're not used to those tracks, but somebody that lives right there, they've watched every single show there in person. They've probably driven at one of them. They're more comfortable at it. And I'd like to see it come to Michigan and have that feel, because I just believe that Michigan would stand out a lot more, because a lot of people get overlooked in this state for what they can do and their abilities, because everybody from Michigan beats up on each other, whether they're in Michigan or out of state.
Oh, there's a lot of cross-state, even cross-county rivalries in Michigan.
Yeah.
You
could go down to Redneck Rumble, and all of a sudden you're in the, like, you're watching that metric DB heat, and then all of a sudden a guy from Michigan wins the raffle car, and he's smoking drivers that are from Michigan, because Michigan's spread out. You're driving anywhere, you could be 6-7 hours away from the next person that's actually in Michigan.
Right.
So I'd just like to see the people from Michigan get the respect that they deserve, because of how much time and effort and the quality of stuff that comes out of Michigan.
Yeah,
gets overlooked.
In my mind, Michigan, you would pull Ohio, Indiana. It's not that far, and then Canada.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like kind of like a crossroads,
Yeah.
And it's not that far for the Canada guys have to go all the way to Bash for Cash. That's 12-15 hour drive.
Yeah.
And if we had a show here in Michigan, it'd be a lot closer for them. So I think you'd have a pretty good Canada turnout.
Yeah. So that's my goal for Michigan. As much as I can help do it or watch it happen to somebody else inside the state, I would support it 100% if somebody could push it to that point, which I know it's hard to do, to offer the money that's going to attract the big show, but that's our goal with our team show or fall brawl that we do. We want to be able to get it to a point where we can pay that money, or like Jack pays a really good purse for his championship. I would love to see that progress into a national level show.
And you being you're on the TNT team. You are the inspector for TNT, and you're giving Jack a shout out. Like if Jack does it first, I would rather see him do it than nobody do it.
I just want it in Michigan. I don't care. Anybody in Michigan.
That's a very humble outlook.
Go to Monroe County Fair, and if Jason Goff can do it, really anybody. Even if you don't see eye to eye with another promoter or another inspector at all times, I just want Michigan to have the respect that it deserves at the end of the day.
Yeah, you've got to be a very good sport to be like, if they get it, that's what I want. I just want it here. I don't care who does it. And you're not like, oh, I want to be the first one to do it. You're saying, listen, I don't care who does it. I just want to see something here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it.
Really, yeah. That's very humble, very very level-headed. Okay. Yeah, I've had John here for a little while. I just wanted to get you recorded. I want to get you on here with some outlook and some history on you. You're a young guy in the sport. I've said that before. Just want to give the young guys some encouragement out there. It is possible. You're in the middle of that up and coming kind of phase at the big show scene, and I just wanted to kind of take a snapshot of that. I think we did a really good job of that tonight. You're over there saying, hey, listen, you know what? I didn't win this time, so I've got to go back to the drawing board. And, we just got to bring a better car next time. So,
yeah.
And then as far as inspecting goes, you're like, hey, I just want to work with everybody. I want everybody to be happy at the end of the day. And, yeah, you're definitely somebody I wanted to get recorded, and you're doing a lot of good things, and we all appreciate it. We all do.
Yeah, I appreciate you setting aside time for me and picking me to be on one of your first podcasts.
Yeah, hey, absolutely.
You're what, less than 5, and to pick me, it makes me feel pretty special. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're on episode 4 right now. We have one lost episode. 1 year from now, 1 year from the day before our episode 2. We're gonna air it if we have, if we're still going strong, if we have enough following, if there's enough demand. It was a test trial episode, so Logan, I appreciate your time tonight. Probably see you next weekend, whether you're driving or just hanging out.
Yeah, I plan on being there, so I'll see you around.
All right, we'll see you.
All right, yeah, you have a good one, Jason or Jared.
Yep, we'll see you.
All right, bye.
All right, bye.